Welcome to my mommy's podcast.
This episode is sponsored by Hiya Chewable Kids Vitamins. It's a new company I found that my kids are extremely excited about. Did you know that most typical children's vitamins are essentially just candy in disguise? Many have as much as 2 teaspoons of sugar, along with some food dyes, some other unhealthy chemicals, or gummy junk that kids should probably never eat and that dentists would probably agree with. Hiya is the complete opposite. It fills the most common gaps in children's diets with full body nourishment and a yummy taste they love without any of that junk. While most children's vitamins might contain as much as 5 grams of sugar and can cause a variety of health issues, Hiya has created a zero sugar, zero gummy, junk-free vitamin that tastes great and, as my kids will attest, is delicious. It's perfect even for picky eaters. Also importantly, it's manufactured in the US with globally sourced ingredients, each selected and screened for optimal bioavailability and absorption. What's cool is they send this to your door on the pediatrician recommended schedule, and the first month you get a reusable glass bottle that you can personalize with stickers. So every month thereafter they send a no plastic refill pouch, which means it isn't just good for your kids, it's also good for the environment and it reduces waste. My kids love the little glass jar that the vitamins are in, and I love how it's low waste. You can find out all about them and their sourcing and the many benefits by going to hiyahealth.com/wellness mama. That's HIYA health.com/wellness mama. This episode is brought to you by Alitura. You've probably heard me talk about them. This is a skincare company I love, and it's founded by a dear friend of mine, Andy, who created these incredible products when he was in a horrible accident that left him with scars on his face. And this sent him into an incredible research phase to figure out ways that he could hopefully heal those scars and not have them with him for life. And he's developed some incredible products that have allowed him to do just that. One of my favorites is their face mask. And if you've seen me on Instagram with clay all over my face and hair, this is likely the one that I'm using. It's a simple mask that does incredible things for the skin and contains dozens of really, really beneficial ingredients. I notice a big difference in my skin tone when I use it regularly. They also have something called the Gold Serum, which I find especially nourishing for my skin without being too oily. And I love to use that, especially before going outside or if I'm going to be in front of the red light. I just find it is really, really beneficial for my skin. I love all of their products because they use completely natural ingredients, and not just natural, but incredibly beneficial ingredients. Andy goes above and beyond to make sure that everything that is contained in these formulas are so beneficial for the skin, and his skin is certainly a testament to how well they work. And I've gotten incredible feedback from many of you who have tried these products and loved them as well. They're much less expensive than spa variations of skincare products, and I find that the quality is so much better, and I don't worry at all because I know they're so natural. I would love for you to check out their products and find out all about the different formulas they have by going to alituranaturals.com/wellness mama. And they've generously offered a discount of 20% with the code wellness mama, all capital, all one word. Again, that's alituranaturals.com, alituranaturals.com/wellness mama, and the code wellness mama to save 20%. Hello, welcome to the Wellness Mama podcast. I'm Katie from wellnessmama.com and wellness.com. That's wellness with an E on the end, which is my new line of safe and natural personal care products, including hair care, toothpaste, and hand sanitizer. I have talked in the last few years increasingly about my own health journey and how it was so personalized and individualized, and I truly had to figure out my own system. Following any other system to a T never worked for me. And I think this is a commonality and something being talked about more and more is each of us needing to find our own best path for health, which is why I'm here today with Sarah K. Hoffman, who is the founder of A Gutsy Girl and also a new online health documenting journal and a written journal. And this was something that was helpful to me in figuring out the factors that actually worked for me to finally get my Hashimoto's in remission and to lose weight. And I think that being cognizant of this and focusing on these core factors and noticing patterns and trends through journaling can be really helpful as part of a healing journey. So we go deep on some of these factors today, including mindset, including rest and food, of course, the common ones, as well as some more specific 80-20 things that seem to help a lot of people. I think you'll get a lot from this episode, and there's a lot of links in the show notes at wellnessmama.fm to the things we talk about. Without further ado, let's join Sarah. Sarah, welcome back. I'm so excited to chat with you again.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh, I think it's going to be a great, really practical episode. And one thing that's been hammered home for me the last couple of years in my own health journey is just how individualized and personalized all of our health journeys are. And I knew that logically, but really that hit home in my experience of actually navigating some of the tougher parts of my own health journey the last couple of years, and now being fully in remission from autoimmune disease. And what I realized was that while there can often be commonalities and wonderful starting points from any given system, at the end of the day, we each sort of have to figure out what our most important factors and each of our own individual 80-20 is for the things that are going to work for us. And I think that can seem like an overwhelming process, especially for people who are just starting out or learning about a lot of the aspects that can go into that. And I also discovered that a huge part of that, especially for me, was being able to track and see what was actually making a difference and what wasn't. Because certainly there are dozens and thousands of resources out there that all have such great advice, but you can think that there's now all these things that you have to do, and you need a way to be able to track the things that are actually working, which is why I was so excited to have you back on because you've created a resource that helps make this very tangible and very practical. So to start off broad, I know you have a health journey as well, and I feel like this will probably tie into the explanation of this health tracking journal that you have, but walk us through the impetus for why you created this and some of the factors that it covers.
All right, sounds great. So the reason I created it, really was just like you said, everyone has their own unique health journeys, and it is so hard to kind of be in the everyday online blogs and different, going to different doctors and getting everybody's 2 cents and opinions about what is going on with you, when the reality is that the only way that you can really get to the bottom of it is by focusing on, really looking inward and how you're feeling and how things are working for you, and, what's actually going on with yourself. Versus, looking at so many different external factors. So really what happened was, in 2007, when I first started journaling, I guess it would have been mostly just a food journal. I started to journal by way of, I would write a date down. I would write, just various foods. I would write, a few symptoms. And at the time I would just kind of make note, like, did I think that these foods were high offenders or low offenders? Did I think they were mistakes, or were they safe foods? And that's kind of how I got started on my entire journey for healing, was really just to kind of correlate foods I was eating and how I was feeling. And, the journey from 2007 until I finally printed this 90-day gut healing journal just a few months ago has been very long. And I've learned so many things along the way. But I think the most important thing that I learned was that if we only focus on writing down, general and random foods paired with symptoms, you will never, ever get to the bottom of anything, because there's so many factors within your own circumstances that you haven't taken into account yet. Like, for instance, an appropriate diagnosis, and then all the lifestyle factors, the sleeping, your mood, your water intake. There's so many different things that fall beyond the food component that are so, so critical.
Yeah. And what I love about this is I think it really highlights the point that at the end of the day, we are each our own primary healthcare provider. And I think people maybe don't think about that enough, especially when we're in health crisis. And I've been there too, wanting to find an outside source that is going to help you or fix you or make things better. And I 100% empathize with that. But I also have discovered on my own journey of this is at the end of the day, we are each our own primary healthcare provider. And it's the day-to-day and the experimentation and dialing in these factors that make the biggest difference in the long run. And that doesn't mean that we can't learn from all of these sources. In fact, I think we should. And one of my core beliefs is that we can learn something from every person we encounter, every situation we encounter. But at the end of the day, the responsibility is ours for figuring out the system that is going to work for each of us. And so that's why something like this is so helpful. You mentioned lifestyle factors. So I think like my audience is pretty well educated, and a lot of them at least have a pretty good passing understanding of a lot of the different foods and how they can impact the body, or at least that foods can dramatically impact the body. What are some of the other lifestyle factors that you included in the journal and that you feel like make a big difference for a lot of people in their health?
Okay, so I will just kind of go over, some of the ones that I put right into the journal for everybody for every single day. But it's very important to note that this journal really was made to be a combination of a traditional journal, like the one that I just described, where you can write your foods. I teach it in a little bit different way than just, writing salad with dressing. But I also combined it with more of a bullet journal approach, in which I give people a key and for really, really dialing down to their own journey. And that all combines food as well as lifestyle. But the lifestyle pieces that I wanted to just mention, because they're pieces that I never really realized were making such an impact on me healing or not healing. These are the ones that are on every single page. But for example, one of them is sleep. So every single day, you have the ability in this little creative way on the journal pages to track sleep. And the reason that is so important is because I once did this study. I couldn't figure out. Some days I would wake up, I was feeling great, like my stomach, nothing would change from what I was eating, or seemingly nothing else was changing. But some days I would wake up and I would just feel famished all day and just, very fatigued, and I couldn't understand why. And so I started to think, okay, I wonder what the difference is in how I'm sleeping. And I was wearing a sleep tracker at the time. And so I did this. I think I did like a 30-day study. And what I found was that the days that I got 7.5 hours to, I think, like even 7 3/4 hours of sleep or less, I felt like that. I felt starving all day. I had no energy. I was just exhausted. But the days that I consistently got that 7 3/4 hours and above, so really like 8 hours is my personal sweet spot, 8 to 8.5 hours, I was feeling better. And after I started to make note of that, I just kept really focusing on, getting that 8 hours of sleep, and it drastically, continued me on my healing journey. And so I had to add it into the journal, because I think that, we talk so much about sleep, and, in theory, we understand, yes, sleep is very important for us. But there's this really fine line when you're trying to heal, and everybody is so different. Some people, they really can thrive at 7.5 hours, but some people need 8.5 to 9. So this is the way that you can really dial in to figure it out for yourself. And it's just a really, really important component. So that's one of them. Another one is obviously water. And so there's just, I have 8 little water cups that you can fill up and just track on a daily basis. Again, it's not like it's rocket science or anything, but what I have found, especially in working with women all over the world for the past decade, is that everyone thinks they're drinking enough water. And most people are more constipated and bloated than have diarrhea, in my experiences and in my research. And so when they really take a step back and are forced to see, okay, how much water am I truly drinking a day? And they start to realize, oh my gosh, I'm only drinking 4 or 5. And I always thought that I was at 8 or above. Then they start to increase and add more water a day. They get to that 8 to 10 cups. All of a sudden, things are starting to move through them a little bit more and a little bit better. So that's another really important component. Another one that I added into the journal is workout intensity. And so I do it a little bit different. There's in the journal key, I have different ways that you can track your workouts. And I am never asking people to track calories in this journal, or, how many calories they burn with workouts. This is the way that I have the workout intensity is people will rate their workout on a scale of 1 to 10. And the reason that's so important is because along my journey, I would feel really bloated one day. And I thought in my head, okay, if I could just, work out harder or more, maybe that bloat would go down. Maybe I could go to the bathroom. But the problem was the opposite always happened. I always felt worse and I felt more bloated, and the next day and the day after I would be more fatigued, and then the cycle would just continue. And I couldn't understand, because I was quote unquote doing all the right things, working out, eating right. And so what I learned over time was that, and I actually say this, and as well, there's a lot of research that shows, the length of time you work out and the intensity really does matter and how your body responds, especially if you have any kind of autoimmune condition or you're just not well. And so what I invite people to do on this in the journal is to mark workout intensity from a 1 to a 10. So the days that, you're working out, you just maybe take a nice couple mile walk and it's very leisurely, it's out in nature, you're really calm, maybe that's just like a 2 or a 3. And you notice that day, wow, I really feel better. And then maybe the next day you think, well, I didn't do much yesterday, so today I'm going to do something really hard. So you go run 6 miles. And then you make note that you're tired the rest of the day, you're starving, you just start to not feel well again. And that's really, really telling. But, more so than that, again, because I created this journal for people for their own personal journeys, it's going to look different for everybody. So you might be able to find over, the first 30 days that you can get by with a workout of intensity of a 5 to a 7, where someone else, they might be truly, really sick and they can only get by with that 1 to 2. And that's okay. There's no judging with it. It's just really to be able to identify patterns and habits and to see how things are or are not working with your body. So those are those are 3 of them. The other, just very basic lifestyle things that are on the page. One is the journal it was intended for the female body. So there's a place where you can write your cycle day. I think it's something that is so overlooked when women are healing their gut, is how they're feeling as it relates to what day they're on with their cycle. There's a place to record energy levels. I've mentioned that a lot with all these other things. Energy levels really play into, how you're doing and how you're healing or not. There's mood. We know today a lot about the gut-brain axis. We know that if things are off with our gut or we're just not well, also there could be things that, emotionally we're not doing well, or we have a lot of anxiety or, whatever it might be. So there's different mood things that we can track. And then just overall, I have a place where people can rate their day. What I found on my own journey is that it's kind of like that non-linear line. You'll rate your day at like a 3 and then another 3 and then a 4, and then it'll spike up to a 5 and a 5, and then it'll go down to 2. And you wonder why. But with, really looking at your journal and what you've been recording, you can see, well, there you go, because the patterns are always going to be there. So those are the main components that are for everyone on every single page of the 90 days.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you touched on all those different aspects. And I think the important thing too is, I know from reading studies, we think that we're good at remembering things in the past, and we're actually really not, especially when it comes to intricate details, even just a couple days out. And any studies that are having people like self-report food intake or water intake after any period of time, they're inherently actually not reliable at even remembering what they ate and drank or their own inputs. And so when you're trying to figure out these factors that are so important, and like you just showed, like such small changes can make a really drastic difference, it's very difficult to try to just keep that all in our heads and remember it and then try to draw patterns from that. Whereas if you have all of these in a centralized place, it's much easier to go back and look and see how the body's responding and to be able to tweak things in a conscious way to figure out what's going to work and what's going to not work. And I love that you mentioned it's a little bit of a regular / bullet journal as well. I think even just the act of journaling, of being intentional for that amount of time, it can help provide so much focus and calm to a person's day. And you probably, I'm sure, have seen this as well in your life and in your own health journey.
Yeah. And actually, that's a good point. That's one thing that I did forget to mention. So this journal really combined tons of different journaling methods that I did on my gut healing journey over the past decade. And so one of the things that really kind of set my days, a lot of times it would just, really like set me back to a place of just feeling that gratitude, and everything was to do a one-liner daily gratitude. So there is a journal out there that is a one-liner daily gratitude. And I kept one of those for a long time. I absolutely loved it. I kept one when my children were really small. I would do one line for each of them each day, like something that I was grateful for them, or something, that they did. And what I realized is that is really part of our healing as well. I would kind of blend gratitude also with different mantras. So when I first started healing my SIBO about a year ago, when it was finally healed, it's something that I would say to myself over and over is, you're healed, your SIBO is gone, you're free to live your life. And the more that I told myself, the more I did heal, and the more I believed it, and the more I didn't believe that I would never heal. So on the top of each page, there is a one-liner so that you can write daily gratitude, because I think it's very, very important. But I also didn't want it to be, a page full where you had to do a certain type of journaling every single day, because I find that when you don't really have those prompts and you're not really sure what to do, you just won't do it at all. And so I wanted to make sure that things were done in a way that people wouldn't feel like it was an extra thing they had to do to their day, but it was something that would enhance their day and enhance their journey. So yes, there is the daily gratitude right at the top of each page.
Yeah, and you just touched on this, and I know it's subtly woven in the entire practice of this journal, but I feel like all these things contribute to the mindset piece. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about this one for a minute, because this was the piece that was missing for me for so long. I've had a lot of the health stuff dialed in, and I was for so many years extremely careful with my diet and had very strict supplement regimen and was doing all the things by the book, quote unquote, on paper, but I hadn't really addressed the mindset side. And so I still mentally was very much stuck in the cycle of all of those health problems and Hashimoto's and having trouble losing weight. And it wasn't until I addressed the mindset piece that it got so much easier to shift all of those other things. And you just subtly mentioned something that I think is so brilliant. When you said in your own SIBO journey that you worded it in the present tense as if it had already happened. I am healed, or this is gone. And I think that's so subtle, but so important, because I think the body does often start to follow our mindset. And so I had another podcast guest explain, we have to be very careful of the questions we ask ourselves or the statements we tell ourselves, because they're so powerful. And so rather than asking, like for me, questions like, why can't I lose weight? At which point the subconscious kicks in to give you all of the reasons why you can't lose weight, which is not actually the answer you're looking for. Start to ask the positive reframe of those questions of, how is it so easy for me to do whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish? Or like you did in the I am statement. So I would love to hear any tips from the mindset side of your journey and how that shifted for you.
Yeah, I actually have done a lot of research on this, and I've done a lot of practice with myself on it. I've done a lot of internal reflecting. I've done a lot of therapy, like talking it out and really trying to work through this all. And because it's so important, on the front cover, where you would write, this journal belongs to, and then you put your name right underneath that, I give everyone the opportunity to really set the tone and the pace for how they really want the next 90 days to align for them. And I ask them to write out my gut healing mantra. So mine currently is heal your gut, heal your life. And it's kind of my life mantra now, but people can, I give people tons of resources for different ideas as like starting places for their own, because I really want people to be able to get in the right mindset before they start this journey. I remember when I was first healing, my mindset wasn't right either. Just like you, I would say, it's going to be so hard because XYZ, or, well, I don't even know what's wrong. So how am I, it was just all these negative things. And I think that the way that our mindset is, it really changes the trajectory of how we heal. Mindset really goes into, how you feel about yourself, and then also how you feel about gut healing. And so you have to first have the mindset of yourself that you're worth it, that you can do it, that you're strong enough, you're capable, everything. You have to believe in yourself that you're going to heal. And then the second thing is that you really have to have the right mindset about the healing journey in general. So yeah, yours is Hashimoto's. Everyone has their own, people use this journal not just for gut healing, to chronic illness in general, I would say, but everyone has their idea about gut healing and if they can do it or if they can't. And if you believe that you will heal, then that's something that I think is very important. You say over and over and over. If you believe in yourself, but you don't believe that healing is possible, they're conflicting. And so I really, really encourage people as much as possible to just get into that mindset and say the things that you believe in yourself and you believe in this healing process and that it can and will happen.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it a lot in depth in our first episode. I'll link to that. But for people who maybe didn't hear that one, walk us through a little bit just the overview of your health journey and the things that you were able to overcome for context.
So my own journey, it really kind of started, I would say, with my colitis diagnosis in 2008. At that time, I didn't know really anything about healing, to be perfectly honest. Like I had said at the beginning of this podcast episode, I started keeping a food journal in 2007, but it was more along the lines of, I ate macaroni and I didn't feel well, and maybe macaroni is not good for me. I mean, it was just so basic. There was nothing more to it. So at the time when I was diagnosed with colitis, nothing clicked. And so I just kept on my journey. And it wasn't until, I started to kind of research here and there, and I started to make some correlations and some connections, but it wasn't until I got super ill in 2014 when I finally kind of said enough is enough. I had rejected a lot of the drugs and medications for colitis. I was put on Canasa, which is a suppository, but it made me worse. And so, that was kind of my first little inkling, like, okay, there has to be more to this. Something's not right. I'm not just going to accept taking this and not make any changes. So I didn't take it, but I did start to make some changes and I started to make some correlations. But after we adopted our first child in 2013, I was just on pins and needles all the time. I was up 24/7. I had exhausted every last resource of my mind, my body, my energy. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to work out like a madman. I had no clue what was going on. And so in 2014, I went and saw my first functional practitioner at the California Institute for Functional Medicine. And we did all of the alternative tests then, all of the blood tests. I did my first SIBO breath test, everything. And I was diagnosed then with a pretty severe SIBO. When I was first diagnosed, I was taking B12 injections to my stomach. I was, at the time, my whole face was broken out into perioral dermatitis. So I had, just face covered with rashes and scaly acne, and it was painful and it was miserable. I was also diagnosed with, quote unquote, adrenal fatigue, which is just the term, and then low functioning thyroid. So I was diagnosed with a whole host of things then in 2014, and it would take me up until summer of 2018 to heal for good. I have been at 100% functioning since then. So it's been over 2 years now, but from 2014 to 2018 is when I did the majority of my healing. And it was during that time period that I kind of made the foundation for everything that I believe today, through trial and error, through research, through therapies and doctors and, both Western and integrative. I've done it all. And so from 2014 to 2018 is really when I kind of formed this idea around my 3 ultimate pillars to gut healing and just healing your life in general. And the first is diagnosis, because, from 2008 to 2014, I was just miserable and I had no idea why. I thought it was, quote unquote, just the colitis. But the truth was that everything that was underlying and making me so miserable was SIBO. And so without that proper diagnosis, I would still be spinning my wheels. And so I'm pretty, adamant that people get the proper diagnosis and to understand that while Dr. Google can be part of that, Dr. Google is not the final diagnosis by any means. And then the second thing was just diet. So from 2014 to 2018, I mean, there's no denying that diet plays a huge role. I would learn on my journey that it's definitely not everything and that it's not the thing that, will make or break a journey, but it definitely made a huge impact on everything with my healing journey. And then the last thing was lifestyle. And the last pillar is lifestyle. And that's because from 2014 to 2018, I think I relapsed from SIBO, I think 3 or 4 times. And I never could understand why, and it's something that is so hard to explain to people today because they think that the answer is the diet or the medication or the supplement, but it's not. It's whatever was underlying the root cause is the thing that you need to work on. And until you focus on whatever that is, I mean, that can be anything from emotional to physical to, I mean, who knows? Everyone is so different, but until you address that and really address it and understand that, it's really hard to heal. And for me personally, a lot of it was lifestyle. And so without the lifestyle piece, I don't believe people ever can fully heal because it's just such a huge piece. So all that to say, in 2018, then in that summer, I took my last round of rifaximin and neomycin. It was about a month long. And it was right around that time that I just really started saying my gut healing mantras. I was journaling in all the right ways. I was really understanding, like, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I am not doing any kind of hard workout tomorrow. And by hard at that point, even meant like 30 minutes of walking. I just really scaled back. I worked really hard on my stomach motility. Like I said, I went to therapies. I did all the things that I had neglected to do in the past. And I believe with all my heart that is the reason I have been 2 years functioning at 100%. I have the ability these days to eat like anything I want and just really live my life. And that's where I get Heal Your Gut, Heal Your Life, because it healed my life. So that's kind of my story, like a super long story in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love it. And to circle on one thing you said about that you were still working out like a madman, I love that you brought that up and that you mentioned not working out too hard is part of recovery. That was something I found as well. And I think, especially for me with wanting to focus on weight loss for so long, that's obviously something that people think is tied in to losing weight is working out more. And what I ended up finding when I actually listened to my body was that I needed the rest and recovery and parasympathetic side much, much more than I needed the workout side at all, especially in the beginning. So for me, during the intensive phase of that rapid recovery from Hashimoto's and when I was losing so much weight, I literally did not work out at all. I went on walks with my kids when I felt up to it, and that was it. And I think that's just something I love to mention because I found after years of thinking I needed to do more and add more supplements and be more regimented, the answer for me actually ended up when I paid attention to these factors like you're talking about was rest and do less and recover and let your body have time to heal without all these extra inputs. I love that you brought that up. Do you find with people, like with your own readers, that often that rest is often more important in the intensive phase than the working out?
Far more important. To this day, I'm very careful. To this day, if I don't get enough sleep or I even feel like even a hint off, I just skip the workout, because whenever we focus on weight loss with gut healing, it's so conflicting, because the thing with weight loss is everyone thinks that more is better. But like you said, less is always better. But here's the thing with women I have found is that it's one of the last things, it was for me too, so I don't blame them, but it's one of the last things that you're really willing to give up. It's very easy to say, oh, I'm going to give up that chocolate cake and that soda because, I'm being quote unquote good. But it's a lot harder if you're bloated and miserable and you think you have all this extra weight that you need to lose, to say, I'm going to give up that hard workout, because what you also know is that that hard workout burns X amount of calories. So it doesn't, in your head and what we've been taught, what society teaches us, it doesn't logically make sense. But it wasn't until I actually I just did it. I was just like, something has to change. Nothing here is clearly changing, and I don't feel good anymore, and I don't want to feel like this forever. It wasn't until I did that I saw, and now I say confidently over and over. And I mean, it's so hard to explain to women, but I'm so passionate about the idea that more, especially when you're trying to heal, is not better in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, exactly. I found I needed much more sleep. Like I needed much more sleep, much less working out. And for me, what ended up being helpful as a compromise was I found that sauna use was really helpful for me specifically, because I was able to get some of the same cardio effects as exercise, but stay in parasympathetic and stay in a relaxed state. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the answer for everyone, to go back to the point of everything being so personalized, but that was definitely really helpful for me. This episode is sponsored by Hiya Chewable Kids Vitamins. It's a new company I found that my kids are extremely excited about. Did you know that most typical children's vitamins are essentially just candy in disguise? Many have as much as 2 teaspoons of sugar, along with some food dyes, some other unhealthy chemicals, or gummy junk that kids should probably never eat and that dentists would probably agree with. Hiya is the complete opposite. It fills the most common gaps in children's diets with full body nourishment and a yummy taste they love without any of that junk. While most children's vitamins might contain as much as 5 grams of sugar and can cause a variety of health issues, Hiya has created a zero sugar, zero gummy, junk-free vitamin that tastes great and, as my kids will attest, is delicious. It's perfect even for picky eaters. Also importantly, it's manufactured in the US with globally sourced ingredients, each selected and screened for optimal bioavailability and absorption. What's cool is they send this to your door on the pediatrician recommended schedule, and the first month you get a reusable glass bottle that you can personalize with stickers. So every month thereafter they send a no plastic refill pouch, which means it isn't just good for your kids, it's also good for the environment and it reduces waste. My kids love the little glass jar that the vitamins are in, and I love how it's low waste. You can find out all about them and their sourcing and the many benefits by going to hiyahealth.com/wellness mama. That's HIYA health.com/wellness mama. This episode is brought to you by Alitura. Probably heard me talk about them. This is a skincare company I love, and it's founded by a dear friend of mine, Andy, who created these incredible products when he was in a horrible accident that left him with scars on his face. And this sent him into an incredible research phase to figure out ways that he could hopefully heal those scars and not have them with him for life. And he developed some incredible products that have allowed him to do just that. One of my favorites is their face mask, and if you've seen me on Instagram with clay all over my face and hair, this is likely the one that I'm using. It's a simple mask that does incredible things for the skin and contains dozens of really beneficial ingredients. I notice a big difference in my skin tone when I use it regularly. They also have something called the gold serum, which I find especially nourishing for my skin without being too oily. And I love to use that, especially before going outside or if I'm going to be in front of the red light. I just find it is really beneficial for my skin. I love all of their products because they use completely natural ingredients, and not just natural, but incredibly beneficial ingredients. Andy goes above and beyond to make sure that everything that is contained in these formulas are so beneficial for the skin, and his skin is certainly a testament to how well they work. And I've gotten incredible feedback from many of you who have tried these products and loved them as well. They're much less expensive than spa variations of skincare products, and I find that the quality is so much better, and I don't worry at all because I know they're so natural. I would love for you to check out their products and find out all about the different formulas they have by going to alituranaturals.com/wellness mama, and they've generously offered a discount of 20% with the code wellness mama, all capital, all one word. Again, that's alituranaturals.com, alituranaturals.com/wellness mama, and the code wellness mama to save 20%. I'm curious, with all the people that you've worked with and all the data that you've seen, and of course with the caveat that there's so much individualized personalization here, are there factors that you would say are kind of part of that 80-20 of things that, like, changes that do make a big difference, or that tend to be more commonalities across the board when it comes to healing?
Sleep for sure, the workout for sure. But the other thing that I think is always pretty standard across anyone who kind of has been triggered with anything, they can't heal, or they're just really uncertain about where everything is coming from, is the stress piece. It's something that, obviously you mentioned it with the stress response in working out. People don't even really realize that hard, intense workouts are a form of stress. People just think that, stress is, oh my gosh, I am late to work, but stress is so much more than that. And I find that that's one of the common underlying things with every single person, is that they cannot get out of that fight or flight mode, and their bodies are just in a state of chronic stress. And as we know, when the body is in a state of chronic stress, it holds on to everything. It's not allowing you to just digest your food appropriately and to be able to absorb nutrients and do what the body is supposed to do. It's so focused on fighting and being in this stressed out state. So that is one thing that I believe probably 98% of people, it's their bottleneck. And that really can be due to thousands of factors. And I think that it's one of the reasons why journaling can work for stress, meditation, yoga, just walking, because it's so simple. Breathing. Also, we don't even think about things like this, but one thing is the stress that we put when we're eating all the time. So for me, one of my issues was motility, and because we were taught that eat every couple hours because you eat less than, and whatever. But that was just putting more stress on me personally, because it never was allowing for the migrating motor complex to come through and sweep through and do its job. So I started to practice more meal spacing to put less stress on my digestive system. Stress just comes in so many different buckets that it's something that's common for everybody, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. That can be the factor that makes it really hard for any of the other factors to work, and often the hardest one to address. And yeah, I love, like I said at the beginning, I love how you get all of these into one central place so that people can actually kind of tangibly see them and start to see patterns. Because at the end of the day, there's, thousands of systems out there, and the one that's going to work for you is the one that you figure out for yourself based on your individual factors. So yeah, I love so much what you're doing. Another question I love to ask toward the end of interviews is if there's a book or a number of books that have had a dramatic impact on your life.
I love this question. So I still maintain the two that I mentioned last time, so I'll just briefly mention them, but then I want to just share about a new book that I'm reading because it's fascinating to me and I'm loving it. But last time I just meant the two books that really have changed my life and that have been just huge on my healing journey, that I have stickies on them and everything. One is The Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. That was the book that it really kind of launched my entire healing journey. And I really started to see food and healing and mind, body connection, gut, brain access, everything in a much different way, in a different light. And to this day, I believe in so many of the ideas and theories that Dr. Natasha presents in the book. And, while I definitely do not follow any sort of GAPS diet anymore, I still think that it's just a really incredible book if you want to learn a lot about the gut-brain axis and just healing the body in general. And then the other book that really has made a huge impact on my life, as you know, Katie, my story isn't just about gut healing. It's also, I am a gutsy girl because I talk about a lot of, issues in general that women face. And one is, this IBS, IBD, but also infertility and stuff like that. And so along my journey, I've had a lot of different life circumstances. And one book that always has gotten me through is the Bible. And I'm just, I'm very passionate about that too. But a book that I'm reading right now that I don't know if you've ever even heard of it, but it's called Body into Balance. It's an herbal guide to holistic self-care. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't. I'm looking it up right now though.
It is fascinating. I really started to get into lately, now I'm at the point of my journey where I'm into gut health more than gut healing. And I believe that there's such a difference in gut health and gut healing. Gut healing, there's very specific things that you have to do, and they're not meant to be long-term, in my opinion. But gut health is something that I am so passionate about now that I'm healed. And it's really just, how can I build the most robust microbiome? I'm like constantly, wanting to do new microbiome testing and all this stuff. And right now, mine is so great, but I'm just like, how can I get it even better? How can I make it more diverse? How can I learn about what makes the gut thrive and just all of that? And so I think one thing that I haven't studied a ton about are just herbs and using them to enhance overall health. And so this book is just really all about herbs. And there's some common ones that everyone has heard of, elderberry and echinacea and stuff like that. But then there's so many that I've never even heard of that I'm just really interested in. And she goes into herbs for digestion and elimination and, for all different types of conditions. And I just find it fascinating. So that's one thing that I'm really into now. I'm going to start practicing with making some of my own tinctures and stuff. So that's my current book.
I love it. That's a new recommendation. I'll make sure it's linked in the show notes as well at wellnessmama.fm, so you guys can find that and check it out. And of course, I will also have a link to your website and all of your resources and to the journal so people can find that, since we've talked so much about it. But Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. This was, as always, of course, such a fun conversation that I think hopefully will help my listeners a lot. And I'm really appreciative of your time.
Thanks, Katie.
And thank you so much for listening, for sharing your most valuable resource, your time, with both of us today. We're so grateful that you did. And I hope that you'll join me again on the next episode of the Wellness Mama podcast. If you're enjoying these interviews, would you please take 2 minutes to leave a rating or review on iTunes for me? Doing this helps more people to find the podcast, which means even more moms and families can benefit from the information. I really appreciate your time, and thanks as always for listening.